If you're just joining us for our 2018 Fall Reports webinar with the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development, Ms. Gelfand is going to deliver a short statement in English, and then we will move to questions from the audience. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Gelfand, and I am the Federal Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development. I'm joined today by Francis Michaud, who delivered our audit on toxic substances, and Elsa DaCosta, who led the marine mammals audit. Before opening the floor to you and your questions, I will give you a brief overview of the findings of the 3 audits we released earlier today, along with our annual report on environmental petitions. Our first audit dealt with the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, which describes the federal government's responsibility to protect Canadians from the risks of toxic substances. This audit is the 5th one we've done on toxic substances since 1999, and we continue to find concerning gaps. The government has identified 138 toxic substances, such as mercury, lead, PCBs, which need to be controlled through either regulations, pollution prevention plans, codes of practice, or some other mechanism. We found that Health Canada and Environment and Climate Change Canada had not assessed whether their action plans were reaching their overall objectives. This means that the government does not know how well it is meeting its goal of protecting Canadians from the risks of toxic substances. The government has developed 39 regulations to control these risks. Environment and Climate Change Canada conducted some 10,000 inspections over 3 years, but many regulations covering substances such as flame retardants received few or no inspections. About 1/5 of the inspections focused on a single substance used by dry cleaners, without any evidence to show that it presented a higher risk to human health or the environment. As far as public information is concerned, both Health Canada and Environment and Climate Change Canada play a role in informing Canadians about the risks from toxic substances. We found that most of the information available on their websites was often hard to find and very technical. Content was not presented in a way that made it easy for the average person to find out about the risks of toxic substances. These weaknesses make it difficult for Canadians to get the information they need to make informed decisions. Let's turn now to our second audit, which looked at what the government has done to protect marine mammals from the threats posed by vessels and commercial fishing. In Canada, there are over 40 species of marine mammals such as whales, dolphins, and seals, and 14 populations are on the endangered species list. We found that Fisheries and Oceans Canada, in collaboration with Parks Canada, Transport Canada, and Environment and Climate Change Canada, was very slow to take action to reduce threats to our marine mammals. Departments have several tools at their disposal to protect these animals. For example, they can establish protected areas, they can set speed limits for vessels, they can close or restrict fisheries, they can set distances for whale watching boats. We found that most of these tools were not used until the situation became severe. 12 endangered North Atlantic right whales, that representing 3% of the world's remaining population, were found dead in the Gulf of St. Lawrence in 2017. It was then that the departments took action to protect a few whale species by, for example, closing certain fisheries and introducing speed limits for ships in some areas. We also found that Fisheries and Oceans Canada lacked the resources and guidance to effectively respond to distressed marine mammals. There are around 900 incidents of distressed marine mammals every year, and very few people are trained to help. The measures recently put in place have been reactive, limited, and late. The clock could well be running out for certain species, such as the West Coast's southern resident killer whale, which has been listed as an endangered species for 15 years and whose population is now down to 74 individuals. there needs to be continued action from the departments to manage threats for all marine mammals. I want to draw your attention now to the results of our third audit. It examined whether federal organizations were taking the required steps to ensure that environmental considerations were included in the information provided to government decision makers. This is an area that we have been auditing for the last 5 years. In 2012, our office started a multi-year plan to audit all 26 government organizations who are required to assess the positive or negative environmental impacts of their proposed policies, plans, and programs. In 2015, we found that the organizations we audited assessed less than half of their proposals, and results were even worse in 2016 and 2017. This year, given past poor results, we decided to re-examine all 26 organizations to once again assess their progress. We were happy to find out that they had carried out strategic environmental assessments for more than 90% of the policy, plan, and program proposals they submitted to Cabinet. This is marked progress over previous years. Let me close with the environmental petitions. These petitions are an important mechanism that Parliament put in place to give Canadians a way of getting answers from federal ministers to their questions about environment and sustainable development. Last year, we received 10 petitions from individuals and organizations. Topics included the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and nuclear waste disposal and management. We also surveyed petitioners about their experience. The vast majority of respondents were not satisfied with the answers they received from departments. However, they stated they were likely to use the petitions process again. So to recap, the government still has work to do on toxic substances and marine mammals, but there's a bit of a bright light when it comes to integrating environmental considerations in government decision-making. Thank you, and we're ready now to take your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Galfond. So to get us started, you mentioned in your opening statement concerning weaknesses in the regulation and control of toxic substances. You paint a rather bleak picture when it comes to the protection of marine mammals. What concerns you most in these reports?
I would say that when it comes to toxic substances, what concerns me the most is that there's activity that goes on to make sure that we achieve certain objectives around reducing toxic substances. So the objectives could be things like eliminating their importation, reducing their use in certain industries. We could say that we want to virtually eliminate them, get rid of the PCBs that are in storage. Those are kinds of overall objectives. And then there's these tools that we use and activity that we have, but we don't actually know if the overall objectives are being met. So I would say that from the toxic substances report, that's my major concern. And on the marine mammals audit, what concerned me the most was the fact that it almost took like a small crisis to happen before the government actually started to use some of the tools that they had available. We have 40 marine mammal species, 14 are on the endangered species list. They couldn't show us that they had done any work on 11 out of those 14 species, and really they waited until 12 North Atlantic right whales passed away before they actually started to really take this seriously and implement some actual measures. I'm still concerned about the remaining marine mammals because right now some of those measures are really only aimed at helping 2 or 3 species of whales. We have 40 others and we don't really want any more to end up on the endangered species list. So there's still more work to be done.